Welcome back to Talk the Walk. With me now is former education sector lawmaker Kin-Yuen. He's also the vice president of the Professionals Teachers Union. Thank you very much again, Mr. Ip, for joining us today.
Thanks.
Now, we're just talking about the national security law and its potential impact on students. Now, Education Secretary Kin-Yuen, he suggested teachers to teach national security law in schools. Do you agree that the subject and more knowledge of the legislation should be taught at schools?
I think teachers have the responsibility to teach about the life, the everyday life. Now the national security law has been in place. So I think it's quite natural for the teachers to teach about that. As a matter of fact, the law is already there. So we have to let the students to know more about the law. I think the factual introduction of the law is very natural. But at the same time, I think the law itself is also very sensitive. And there are a lot of controversies surrounding the law. So when we are talking about the education about the law, when it comes to senior school forms, for example, Form 4, Form 5, Form 6, when we teach about this law, will it be merely the factual introduction, or we can start some discussion on different aspects? Some of the aspects can be quite controversial, and can that kind of education be inspiring to inspire people to think and in more some more different perspective? And so I think I would say that the education of the law is important, but at the same time, if we come to senior school forms, I hope it won't be a kind of just simply indoctrination of some ideological ideas. So in some deeper level things, we should encourage more discussions.
And in your opinion, who should be responsible for the factual introduction of the law?
I think the factual introduction of law, the government can easily provide information or even teaching package for the teachers, and school teachers can always rearrange the materials for their own, for the sake of the students, because they have to judge from, they have to make professional judgment from time to time whether the materials fit the standards of the students, fit their interest, and I think the teachers should have their own style as well. So the teachers can make an adjustment from time to time.
All right, now I want to move on to something about you yourself. And as we know that you have quit the LegCo with all your opposition colleagues, now there's no opposition voice for the education sector in LegCo. How do you plan on fighting for Hong Kong's education, let's say, fend off further moves made by the pro-establishment camp in the future?
It's a pity that I have to leave the Legislative Council, and you're right that I represent the opposition voice. Actually, well, that term is well, we can have a thought about it, but I think after leaving the Legislative Council, I'm still the vice president of the Teachers Union, and I think my capacity is still there, and I would still voice out my different ideas. For example, appearing in this episode is one of the things I'm doing, and I will talk to different media, and also a few days before we had a press conference about the teaching of the subject of liberal studies. So we reflect the ideas of the fellow teachers. So these are very important things. And at the same time, I think, well, defending the teachers from being no unreasonable persecution is also very important. And I think, well, the teachers union is doing it very we'll do it. We'll work hard on this, and we try to defend the teachers.
Now, you were elected into the Legislative Council in 2012 and re-elected in 2016, both with a landslide victory against your pro-establishment opponents. Now, do you think it's your comparatively moderate image that attracts the voters, and do you plan on maintaining that image in your future fight?
Well, I think, being moderate is my political belief in my nature. So I think I'm not going to make any change about it in the future. But I think I won the 2 previous elections, not only because of my own image, but it's also the efforts done by the Professional Teachers Union in the past almost 50 years is widely recognized and accepted by our fellow teachers. So I think, the Teachers Union is also very important in the election.
What advice would you give to your former party, the Democratic Party, or just all the pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong? What advice would you give them to continue doing what they're doing to, fight for what they think is right?
I think the situation is getting worse. We should stay in the Legislative Council, but even that we cannot do it anymore because we cannot keep the minimum level of 1/3 of the seats of the Legislative Council, and the situation is getting worse, or because of other factors as well. For example, the administration can easily get rid of individual legislators because because of the recent legislation from Beijing. So the situation is getting worse. But I think for Democrats, we have to stick to our own original belief. We want to improve the society. We want it to become more democratic, and we really treasure the freedom and liberty and the lifestyles in Hong Kong. So I think we have to fight for it, and we have to keep fighting on for it. So I think, my advice is that even the situation is getting worse, we still should stand firm.
Now, you said you didn't want to quit LegCo. Will you contest the LegCo election next year?
Well, it depends. I think, there is personal factor, family factor, and also ultimately is the decision of the Teachers Union. And I think it's always good to have a new face. But we have to wait for the final decision by the Teachers Union as a whole.
Okay, so this is my last question for you. As we all know, former Democratic Party lawmaker Ted Hui has imposed self-exile now in Britain. Under what circumstances would you consider leaving Hong Kong as well?
Well, I love the place. This is the place I was born and I grew up. So I would like to travel to outside, but I don't want to leave the place. But if the situation get very, very difficult, I think everyone have to think of other options. But I hope that the situation will get well, that most of the people do not need to consider fleeing the place because of political reason. If people are searching for a better place, they they like different living style, it's a good thing. But if it is because of political reason, it's actually a very sad thing. So I hope that the situation can get well. But it's not what we can control. So we do not have total control over the environment. But let's try our best to keep the place a better place.
Do you have what's the bottom line for you?
I think personal liberty is very important. Safety is also important. I think that these two elements apply to many people as well.
All right. Thank you very much for the conversation, Mr. Ip. And I'll see you right here next week on Talk the Walk. Stay tuned.